Is the universe a hologram? Is it conscious? How is that even possible? Come on, let's access Akashic records and find out. Welcome to episode 6 of Accessing the Akashic Records, the Holographic Universe. So the earliest known mention of our universe or reality being holographic and illusory comes from religious teachings such as the Sanskrit Hindu Vedas, the ancient Egyptians, the Sumerians, even the Mayans and Buddhist teachings. It's found in the Gnostic teachings and the Hermetic teachings. Even the Essenes and Dead Sea Scrolls and the Emerald Tablets. So it's found in many places, and of course not to forget the Law of One, and many indigenous Aboriginal tribes and their oral traditions speak of this concept also. So we only have to look at computer games and how they've gone from Pong to virtual reality in the space of 40 years, which, you know, virtual reality is indistinguishable from reality almost. So we can see how it's highly possible for us to create this holographic version of reality, let alone for a more advanced intelligent species to do it. So now that's not what I'm proposing is happening to us here, but there is certainly more evolved high density and dimension beings who are creating this world for us, and that's what I'm going to propose and show you in this video. Alright, so first we need to understand this concept and understand how a hologram actually works. So as you can see here in the top, we have a laser being split in. One part's hitting the object, the other's bouncing off and hitting a mirror, and both beams are colliding together, creating what's called an interference pattern, and that's being recorded on a film or a plate, a recording plate. So this is collecting the data of the actual object. Then in the bottom we've got pretty much the projection coming from the developed film plate, and it's creating the holographic image on the other side. So we have the 2D object containing information or data, and then that's projecting this hologram or this 3D version of this information. Sorry, my mouse is really playing up here. Bear with me. Alright, so each part of the hologram consists of the sum of the whole, or a blueprint of the whole, and I've alluded to this in episodes building up to this. What that means, so this is essentially what a fractal is. So if you cut up the hologram image or the recorded plate into the tiniest, most random pieces, and then even cut up even further, the pieces still contain the whole image. So it's like the blueprint of the whole, the sum of the whole. And this is what occurs when the interference pattern's being distributed out through the whole picture. So it's fractalized versions of the whole. And that's essentially what a fractal is. So if you were to zoom in or zoom out on any tiny piece of that object, such as the pictures you see there in front of you, it has what's known as self-similarity at all levels. So the pattern continues to repeat. So you can see, if the universe is indeed a hologram, that means the tiniest particle has a blueprint for the whole, which is a fractal. And that's exactly what scientists are now proposing and actually have evidence to back it up. So a fractal is a term for this concept, and if you wish to see the mathematical demonstration for how this is done, then check out, I urge you to check out the Mandelbrot set, where no matter what part of the image you zoom in and out of, as I said, you'll see self-similarity. So the pattern just repeats. Now, the science shows us, as many of you should already know, through the double slit experiment, which shows us exactly how particles act as both a wave of potential like light, or a wave of energy, or a wave of water, and also acts as a physical atom fixed in space when being observed, which is known as the quantum wave collapse. So when there's no conscious observer at all exists as potential energy. But as soon as the conscious observer is in the picture, it acts according to the preconceived perception of the observer in physical space-time. Then we have more advanced variations on the double slit experiment, which is called the delayed choice quantum eraser, where they thought if we put a detector after the photon has passed through the actual slits, it would show us the interference pattern, yet it doesn't. And it's as if the photons have gone back in time and acted like a particle before going through those slits. So it's really thrown a spanner in the works for scientists, quantum physicists. So what they've done is they've added more variations where they've split the photon and created in entangled pairs. You can see there in the picture. So you've got two entangled pairs being split up in going to various detectors. So they shoot the entangled pair and try to get a different result for each photon. Yet it was the same, even though one was observed by a detector and the other was not. So they got a particle pattern as if it was being observed in both regards. So now when the detectors were random and unknowable, so the result, it was unknowable whether because they shot it through detectors in random ways, so it was unknowable whether it was had a detector watching it or not. So it was completely unknowable, and what they would see is an interference pattern again. So it's another spanner in the works. So if there's no way of knowing whether it's been watched or observed, then it reverts back. So it's like these photons know that we have no way of knowing, and therefore they act accordingly. But if we know and we have a way of knowing, then it shows us the result of the beams, the two lines, as if the particle went through and acted as an atom. So also if we put detectors on half, but then we destroy that data and only look at the result, we also get an interference pattern, even though we know it was actually recorded. If we don't look at that data, then it still acts as an interference pattern. So this is another extreme spanner in the works. Next, the DNA phantom and teleportation effects. Now we know DNA is the blueprint for how our cells behave, and that stem cells are cells that have not been encoded with the DNA blueprint or information as what type of cell they are yet to become. And we know, thanks to the experiments of Dr. Garyaev and Dr. Fritz Albert Popp, DNA absorbs light and leaves the photons in the same shape when DNA is removed. So as you can see there, you have photons of light in a container, quartz container. Then you put in the DNA and it absorbs the light. You remove the DNA and the information or shape of the DNA is still contained within there. So we know DNA stores light, and it actually contains less when we're sick, we're physically ill. We also know that carcinogens scramble light at 380 nanometers, which is the ultraviolet range of the electromagnetic spectrum. So when our DNA has enough light and it's not scrambled by these carcinogens, our cells operate and replicate correctly. But when there's not adequate light and it's scrambled, and our cells are scrambled, as in they don't get correct information from the DNA, they do things like turn into cancer or some type of illness. They start to degrade, they over-replicate and create abnormal cells and things like that. They don't behave as intended. So there's a scramble in the information coming from the DNA coming. So that something's is information contained within the DNA, and that light coming through, shining through, creating giving the cells the correct information. I'll get there. Now there's also been experiments where a human zygote has been removed from the mother and put in a test tube. However, only 80 cells have replicated, and then it goes into sort of a stasis mode where the information of the mother's DNA is no longer there to tell the cells how to replicate. But if it's placed back in the mother, into the womb, then it begins replicating again. So we see that same effect. So without the information getting through to the cells, it'll just simply hold. So we also have, thanks to Luc Montagnier, whose experiments demonstrated what he calls DNA teleportation. And this is where the electromagnetic information of DNA is recorded, and then it's used to create DNA strands by emitting that exact electromagnetic information into water, despite no DNA appearing to be present. So it's essentially creating that same DNA information within it. So these are quite earth-shattering experiments. DNA transformation is another one, where we have experiments where a complete transformation of DNA has actually occurred. We're using a laser for a light source and the ELF of 7.83 Hertz, which you may recognise as a Schumann resonance. For example, the agricultural corporation Ciba Geigy discovered they could transform existing plant seeds into extinct varieties simply by zapping them with a weak electrostatic current. This generated stronger and faster growing wheat, extinct fern species and tulips with thorns. The Italian scientist Pier Luigi Igana energetically transformed a living apricot tree into an apple tree, actually causing the fruits on the branches to metamorphosize within 16 days. He also zapped a rat with DNA wave information from a cat, causing the rat to grow a cat tail in 4 days. Korean scientist Dr. Zhang Kangjing got a patent for a device that used microwaves to transfer the DNA wave information of a duck into a pregnant hen. Roughly 80% of her eggs hatched as half duck, half chicken hybrids. Again, Dr. Peter Garyaev zapped salamander eggs with a low-level laser and redirected the information beam into frogs' eggs. And the frogs' eggs experienced a complete metamorphosis and grew into healthy adult salamanders. absolutely amazing stuff. So there's many cases and many more that are classified, but we know with the seed of information contained within DNA in the right environment, this 2D information becomes 3D physicality. That's essentially what's happening here. Now, for something a little more esoteric of the science and experiments, sacred geometry is the formula for various parts of a creation, such as the micro scale and the macro scale of it. As you can see there, you got cells at the micro level and galaxies at the macro. So this is usually a 2D image, as you can see there on the left column, the sacred geometry. And what we have essentially is 2D information, or the blueprint, that is creating a 3D hologram, or what we know of as physicality, which is, so it's like the blueprint for cells or galaxies, and for creation essentially. So thanks to quantum physics, we know that every atom in the universe is 99.9999% empty space, or more accurately, energy. So if we have all this information about the universe being more non-physical than it is physical, and existing as information and energy rather than what we think of as tangible physicality, why is this so? Where does it actually come from? Well, geometry, science, mathematics, these are all languages in which we're able to try and explain the creation and show just how every atom is an infinite fractal, and that it is a 3D hologram being projected. But what do we know about the other side? What is it? What is it? Well, it's called the source field, the unified field, pure consciousness, the morphogenetic field, a wave of infinite potential, and many other various names. So we have all these theories that people have come out with for those specific fields. Like, they all have slight variations, but they're all trying to describe the same kind of thing. Essentially, God, it's the other realm, the other dimensions, the non-physical dimensions. Now, I've explained the dimensions and densities in 2 videos ago, so if you're not sure what I'm talking about, then go back and watch that video, because if that law of one description of densities and dimensions is correct, it fills in a lot of the gaps. So yeah, we have all these theories, and we have ways of tapping into this field through free energy devices, which unfortunately are kept very secret. So anything that taps into these is not for general public. But that's a whole nother, conspiracy. But we can also tap into it via our own deep states of consciousness. But there's no possible way for us to, who are immersed in this actual 3D physicality, being on this side, to have actual proof. It's more faith and trust that the existence of it is actually there. Yes, we can tap into it with our technology, but there's still no tangible proof to satisfy the logical left brain, ideological world in which we find our current mainstream belief so heavily entrenched in. On the other side of the same coin of reality, we have what is considered pseudoscience or esoteric or metaphysical wisdom. So as I propose, the source of this information is not from this realm, dimension, or planet, hence the term exo-spiritual or exo-spirituality. Essentially, these sources come from the other side of the field, time-space as opposed to space-time. So they have insider knowledge as to the workings of these higher dimensions. So imagine trying to explain the 3D to 2D beings. Well, the same is happening when they try and explain their expanded perception to our limited perception. And we can try and ascertain the concepts and translate it for the rest of us, and essentially interpret it in many ways. And the concept of Chinese whispers is what occurs, and hence the many variations in all this esoteric and metaphysical wisdom. So So what are we actually being told about this holographic universe? What is this esoteric and metaphysical wisdom coming from the other side? Well, as you can see here in the picture, the torus is a form of flowing energy dynamics at every scale of existence. The 3D structure of the torus is called the vector equilibrium. That's the geometric shape. It's a blueprint by which nature forms energy into matter. We can observe it everywhere, in atoms, cells, seeds, flowers, trees, animals, humans, hurricanes, planets, galaxies, and even the cosmos as a whole, the whole lot. The whole solar system, the whole galaxy, everything has this energy field, this emanation of energy field. So it's an electromagnetic field with a positive emanation or radiation, and then the negative absorption or contraction. In the heart or the middle, you have the singularity or unity. So this is also a great metaphor for explaining how all of creation emanates from love or the heart, the unity, and then emanates out or radiates out, and then absorbs back in and becomes unity or the singularity again. So the universe is conscious, and it's essentially what is known as God, which is part of us and we're part of it. I already covered that we go through an evolution in consciousness, and during this we return, and we go on this journey. We go through a wide array of experience, gaining more perception and less physicality as we go through these densities and dimensions. So if none of this is making sense to you, you'll need to watch the densities and dimensions video that I did. So the higher self, or our oversoul, or sixth density dimension part of us, is the part that conceives this reality. It sets up the lessons and conditions for these incarnations in third density, within the third dimension. So third density is what our physical body is, our chemical, physical, dense body. Our third dimension is what we exist in. So you need this type of vehicle to exist in this type of dimension. Now, this is all done in collaboration with our higher selves. So, with other higher selves, rather, is what I meant to say. So, our sixth density higher self, or oversoul, is working with other higher selves on the other side, all setting up these lessons and conditions for a certain, trying to steer us to make to learn certain lessons. We're trying to teach ourselves. It's like a so this 3D holographic physical part actually perceives these acts and acts accordingly to our own free will choice. So there's a form of communication between these parts of the self, as if there's this 3D self that may not always take heed, then that catalyst is going to persist. So catalysts can be negative or positive situations, and they're just trying to steer us in a certain direction, hence the conceiver moniker. So they're conceiving these lessons, trying to steer its lower self, which is us, to make certain or learn certain lessons, not trying to make us make decisions, but trying to help us to learn certain lessons. So that we're the perceiver of the situation. So we act how we perceive any situation. So this is where the choice comes in. We choose how to act and we have a choice of two ways. We can act in service to service to all, or service to self. So we can, in any situation, those are the choices we essentially have, or we can do nothing. Everything's trying to guide us to make a choice one way or the other. That's exactly what we're here for in this realm. Again, I explain that in the philosophical teachings of the Law of One. So essentially we're being told that this 3D realm of existence is actually created for our souls. So the non-physical portion of us, to gain accelerated experience that's not available in any of the other realms. So whether you're thriving or struggling, the majority of why is simply because you have made a choice on some level of your multi-dimensional existence. And it's never too late to improve yourself and become more loving, compassionate, understanding and forgiving. You know, get rid of that karma. Don't hold on to things in the past. Let them go. It's happened. Just if you're not happy with maybe the way you've acted in the past, then that's fine. You've changed now. You're ready to make those changes and react differently. So you're ready to be a different perceiver. So you're seeing what's being conceived for you, what path is being put in front of you, how you react to it from there is up to you. So that's your choice here in this dimension. So we're all here to experience this grand co-creation experiment. May as well be happy in the present and embrace the moment. Carpe diem. So thank you very much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, hit subscribe, like, leave a comment, and be sure to check out the links below for further research and also how you can help support me and get great rewards through Patreon. Check out my other videos. They're all in order. Watch them in order because they are all building upon concepts, and it makes much more sense if you watch them in order. And tune into next week's episode, which is the Electric Universe, and that also ties into the choice. So love and light. Namaste.